I'm here to talk about perspective, and I've seen today's talk, and I kind of feel like mine is a little bit silly, but hopefully you'll find it interesting. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm a really good drawer. I draw very good. So I'm a web designer, like most people here, and I teach web design at the university. I'm also a community manager at that part of the university. That's really fun. And well, I have this ACA, Visual Communication with Adobe Photoshop, this exam, and then I got Google AdWords certified. And crazy thing about me, I'm a coffee addict, so I drink a lot of coffee. I'm one of those Harry Potter crazy fans that dress like Harry Potter from time to time. So now let's go with perspective. So what we must wonder is, what is perspective? We're going to look into the dictionary. We find this. The perspective comes from Latin perspexire. It means to see through. And it's an approximate representation on a flat surface, such as paper or our computer, of an image that is seen by the eye. I don't know if any of you have studied television or something like that. There's always white balance, a lot of things, because everything we see on TV or we see on the screen is never like the eye sees it. The eye sees with depth. In the screen, there's no depth. So now we can create it with CSS. So basically, perspective have three elements. Those are point of sight, horizontal line, and vanishing point. Those are things of graphics, not really CSS. So the point of sight is something like this, is the point to which the eye of the observer is supposed to be directed when he looks. So if we are sitting down, we have a different point of sight, and if we are standing, we have another different. And there's the horizontal line, which is also known as the horizon, which resembles that horizon or boundary, that line that seems to part the ocean or ground from the sky, forming the shoreline line. So this could be this as well, and it's determined by the point of sight, which is determined by the real or supposed vision of the viewer. So if we are sitting down or we are standing, it will change. And the vanishing point is not this movie, but it's something different. And it's the point on the horizon at which receding lines of the perspective converge. It could be one or more than one. In this example, there are two. But in this one, for example, there's only one, and it's always on the horizontal line. So it could be used in photography as well. We have the vanishing point in the middle, and we see that every line goes to that point. There's kind of a golden rule we must listen to that says that objects are drawn as smaller as the distance from the observer increases. That means that we can make funny photographs, such as this one, or even funnier, this one. So you can go and try this outside then. Well, what is perspective in web design? Why am I talking about point of view and all that? Well, perspective means that we are going to play with the axes of things, theta axis, y-axis, and the theta plane. So we are moving the element through those places. So we're going to use the transform property, which we know because it scales things, skew, rotate, translate, and we can make a salad out of it as well, mixing all of them. What we must bear in mind is that the original space of the element is still occupied, even though we do this. So we have something called transform origin, which has been mentioned today already. It's really easy. We have here both elements with the same transform, which is rotate 40 degrees and scale 0.6. Both are exactly the same. But if we add to this one a transform origin, we'll see that what's known as the anchor point or the pivot changes. So transform origin, we could put top right. And now when we hover over it, it goes to top right. So we changed that point, which could be also our vanishing point. Besides putting the things, we can also put percentages, but we heard today that there are a few bugs with it. But we can put numbers, such as 200 and 0, which is exactly the same. Or we can put as well numbers that are outside the element. This element is 200 pixels wide and 200 pixels height. So we can put 400 even though it's outside the element, and we get this. So what we find here is a little problem, because when the element moves, we lose focus of it, and it goes a little bit crazy like this. So we must fix this. And it's really easy to fix. There must be various ways. The one that I found was using a feather, such as Darth Vader over here. So here you are. When we hover over the feather, we activate the transform. So thank you. And I was going to put Lord Voldemort, that he has no children. So this is our HTML. We have Daddy over here. We have the div that we want to transform. So when we apply our CSS, we ask Darth, that means the father, and when we hover over it, we activate div, that means this red one over here, and we change it. So we can now put whatever we want in transform origin, modify this, and it goes crazy, but we don't lose focus because we are hovering father or Darth Vader. So that's one good solution for that. Well, how do we use perspective with this? It could be simplified in 3 steps. First, we create that parent element. Then we apply transform style preserve 3D. And then we apply a transform perspective with a value. So here is a daddy, which is red. We can see it if we do this, it's red. We have the sun, which is this green one, and we are going to work with the sun. Once it is applied, transform style preserve 3D and perspective 600. And so we can transform, for example, rotate the x axis, maybe 3 degrees, and we get this. So it's pretty cool and it's pretty simple. And we can complicate it a little more. If we go over 90, the element turns around, which is really easy. We can also apply transform origin over this. And it gets like this. So this is the basis of perspective, but we can complicate it a little more because, as you see, this is not a random number. Because if we change it, we'll see a difference. If I could put double of it, we can see that the perspective is less intense, it's more subtle. And if I put in a smaller number, such as 200, what happens is really strange. The element first goes behind the father. Besides, the intensity of the effect is bigger. So what happens over here when we cross a line is that we are affecting the stacking context of it. So transform perspective affects the stacking contents, such as opacity does. I don't know if you heard, but opacity causes this problem as well. So we have these things that preserve 3D creates a new stacking context, and so that's opacity. And the value of the perspective determines the intensity of the 3D effects. That means, for example, if we are a little ant looking at the dog, we'll see a big 3D. But if we are a human being, we may not see the effects so big and intense. And we can modify the vanishing point or the anchor point by using transform origin. So we can do this really useful stuff, such as a wiper. This is a car wiper. Doesn't really look like this, but it is. So yes, it's really useful. I know everyone wants to do this. And then we have backface visibility, which has been talked already, which is really, really simple. So we have this element, which is exactly the same as before, and we apply transform. Rotate, we can rotate y instead of x. And if we rotate it like 100 degrees, we get to see the other side of the element. For example, we can put like this. So everything is turned around. And if in one case we don't want to see that back part, we can just tell it that we don't want to see the back of the element. And that could be done with backface visibility. Simply hidden. So now we don't see the back of the element, but it is still there, because if we do this, we see it until we don't see it anymore. So that's basically backface visibility. It does that. It hides the back of the element, which, of course, was unable to see before this property. So a simple thing to do with perspective, which is really nice, is flipping a card. What we are going to flip now is actually a letter. So this is our HTML. We have a father, which holds all the elements. And then we have another div that is kind of hidden that will help us to not to lose focus. And then we have the front, which is an image, and the back, which is another image. So this will be our CSS. This is our Hogwarts letter. We are getting to the school. And so we have transform style, preserve 3D apply, and perspective 800. So all we need is, first of all, to show in these two parts. And we can do this by applying position absolute. So we showing them like this. And now we have this. So what we should do now is applying the transform and to turn it around. So we will apply it to that when we hover over it, but we actually apply it to hidden because we don't want to lose focus. So hidden, we have a transform of rotate y, because we want to rotate it one way and not the other, of 180 degrees, which should be the middle. So we have this. It's not quite finished. And it turns, so that's OK. So what now we need simply to show the front in the front and the back in the back. So for that, we simply hide the back of the element with backface visibility. And now we will have this. But it's not exactly right, because what we are seeing here is the front in the back and windows. The front in the back and the back in the front. So we don't want that. We don't want it the other way around. So it's pretty simple to fix it. We just need to ask back to transform and rotate y another 180 degrees in order to get the front into the front and the back into the back. So now we do have the element, and it's really pretty, and it's our Hogwarts letter, and we are getting there. So that's simply that. With a little more of animation and all that, we can do this kind of crazy things, and it just turns around and turns around forever. So that carries another few things, such as another transformations and animations. So these other components are really simple. We're going to see them here. This is what we saw by now is simply that hover and run. So we turn the element, this is what we see for now. But we have been working only with rotate Y and rotate X. This is what we get. But besides that, we can also mix them. So now we get to rotate both axes at the same time, and we get this. And besides, there's something else we can turn, which is the zeta plane. So we can rotate, I'm gonna the zeta, maybe around 300 degrees, so we can see it right. So we can mix all of the axes, mix them all together. This is one way of doing it, but there's actually a shorter one, and that's rotate 3D, which is a little special. We can put something like this, 0, 1, 0, and a degree, like 45. So when we do this, what we see is that we are activating the y-axis. So this one over here refers to y, this one refers to x. So if we put 1, 1, then we get this because we are activating on both the x-axis and the y-axis. And the other one, the other 0, is only this driving me mental. There you are. The other one is the zeta plane. So now we get this. We can also make them separated, like 120, 15, and 10. And we get sort of this boring thing. So besides rotate 3D, we also get translate. And translate could also be used in X or in Y. And it simply translates the element. If we put a negative value, it will go this way. And if we put a positive value, it will go the other way. So it's pretty simple. But we can mix it as well with other axes. So we could put translate Y, and then mix X and Y, and it moves a little bit more. And besides, we could use translate zeta. And we could say just 200 pixels because it's better to exaggerate when we are trying out the stuff. So we can see that it kind of gets bigger. So why does it get bigger? Because it's getting closer to us. That's really interesting, and we can see it better if we rotate the element, maybe 50 degrees, and rotating away. So now we see that. So the translate zeta, what it does is to move this part, this axis of the element, and in a way getting it closer to us, which is really useful when we do something like this. We turn the element around, and it gets closer to us and farther from us in the process. So there it goes. And it gets closer and further. And translate also has the short version, which is simply translate 3D, and we put different values, like 25 negatives that go up, and the other one could be something like this. So we have this thing. Once we modify all that, we apply animations, we can create something like that letter over there. So That is definitely a little short. About browser compatibility, luckily it's kind of nice. It goes along with transform, so every browser that has a problem with transform property will have it with perspective. So in WebKit and Blink, we need prefix, but this is say the next version of Chrome will not need it, so luckily will not need it later. Firefox is okay, and sadly Internet Explorer doesn't read Preserve 3D, so you can use Modernizer and another thing to fix it. Well, that's basically all. Sorry, it was a little short. And so that's in case everything. So thank you.